Living? Come on, that is so 2000. Being 50% opacity is in right now. So, why don't you join me? Huh? What? Hey, who turned the lights on? That like totally ruins the effect. Oh hey, I'm alive. You ever notice that for a while there, nearly every Nintendo console launched with a Mario game? From Bros to World to 64 Land, he was a surefire choice to be a desirable bestseller right from the start. However, when they were picking the plumber for their GameCube launch title, the guy picking the plumber was colorblind. Luigi's Mansion was the launch title for the GameCube. Because, I mean, what else were you gonna play? Tarzan? Built as the showcase of the capabilities of Nintendo's newest console, this was the title Nintendo wanted you to be serious about. People thought it was a joke. Now, as we head into the start of Luigi's Mansion, here's your warning that I'm going to spoil pretty much everything from the entire trilogy. If that's too scary for you, turn back now. Upon starting up the game, we're given a friendly welcome to our mansion. Hey, that's what I said! So it turns out that Luigi just won a mansion. Sure, he didn't enter a contest for it, but whenever you're notified of an unsolicited prize, you take it, right? Maybe this was a bad idea. Thankfully, this old man gave us a Hoover, and now we can contain the dead. Luigi's Mansion is an exploration game at its core, wandering around this giant mansion, going pretty much wherever the doors aren't locked. Who knows what you'll find? Horror, terror, money, casualties, a diamond, more casualties, more money, grandma. 9 times out of 10, you're gonna find ghosts in these rooms. But, they're ghosts. You can't see them with your plumber eyes. You're gonna have to use a flashlight. Wait, really? Does that work? What's that supposed to mean? Ghosts don't turn on lights when they enter rooms, because they're jerks. So once you find them, you gotta put them in Luigi's timeout backpack. The combat loop is pretty simple. Wait for the right moment to shine your light at a ghost, revealing their heart, and then try and suck them up. Now, like all beings, living or dead, they don't enjoy dying, so they try and run away, where you've got to keep up the right angles on the control sticks, which is harder than it seems. The vacuum stays locked on to help you out, and generally lower health ghosts are pretty easy to suck up, but when things get tougher, it might take a few tries. If you're really good, you can suck up multiple ghosts at once, which is wildly satisfying. Then, once you get them all, the lights come back on and you'll probably get a reward of a key that lets you move on to another room. But there's a lot more to do in these rooms. Oftentimes there are tons of things to interact with, such as opening cabinetry, sucking up whatever your poltergeist can handle, or spinning a ceiling fan to terminal velocity. This mansion was filled with some absolute ballers, who clearly forgot to write their wills before being killed, and left behind coins, dollar bills, solid gold, bars, tons of gems, and boatloads of pearls. But we'll get to that part later, be patient. This incentive to become rich as hell is a great motivator to wander through the depths of this place, discovering every little nook and cranny it has and see all the little interactions they put in here. I should probably also mention the game's elemental metals. Around the mansion you find little candles, running faucets, and refrigerators, and with the corresponding metal, you can suck those up and then use them for some environmental puzzles and killing some special ghosts. It's a neat little addition, enough that I can mostly ignore that the only reason it's here is to make it appear that it's not just another tool to prevent you from progressing, effectively just making it a glorified key. Mostly. The real culmination of everything so far are the game's bosses, known as portrait ghosts. There are tons of them, each with their own unique designs, environments, and gimmicks. None of them feel very similar to each other, unless they're meant to. Sometimes they just feel like normal ghosts with lots of health. Other times they have a puzzle to solve, and I liked basically all of them. Except when you had to wet this girl's bed. That was weird. When sucking up these ghosts, the more health you can drain in one shot, the more pearls you get, which give lots of money and a nicer frame in the portrait gallery, meaning skill in combat is genuinely rewarded here. While most of these ghosts are only gatekeeping keys, larger bosses such as this guy that looks like a regular ghost, 15 boos, and just a child block off parts of the mansion, splitting the game into 4 chapters. Most of the time these chapters, while all a part of the same building, even the same floor, are physically separated and not easy to access from one another. This can make walking about the mansion a chore, especially when you encounter the boos in the game. At the start of chapter 2, Luigi does what any good hero would do, and free the main villains from their imprisonment. We call that content, youngster! These boos can be found around the mansion in rooms after you clear them. Using the radar on the Game Boy Horror, everyone's favorite GPS cross cell phone cross Pokemon pinball device, you can search for boos hiding in furniture. When you find one, you find it sort of like a normal ghost, but you don't lock onto the boo, so it's really easy for them to get away into another room, or a hallway, or into another chapter. This can and will happen over and over and over and over and over again, and it makes getting all of them a chore. You don't need all of them, and Boolossus over here gives you 15 anyways, but you need most of them. Having doors between chapters would have been nice. Maybe they could have been unlocked by doing optional portrait ghost fights, which, what do you know, there already are some. I'm just saying you had options, Nintendo EAD. As a project built to be a graphical showcase, Luigi's Mansion is filled with impressive visual effects, animations, and model quality for its time. Dust has never looked better. But graphics aside, it truly knew how to create a spooky atmosphere. It feels dark and lonely, a vibe of being unwelcome and where I'm not supposed to be. The lack of background music in completed areas, only Luigi's humming, makes it feel like Luigi trying to keep his emotions calm and under control. It makes things pretty creepy. I damn hope so, because that was at the top of the rubric. After beating Boolossus, the mansion plunges into darkness because of this, and now there's ghosts everywhere again. Thanks. I don't know how he did it, but I'm like 95% sure this is King Boo's fault. Hey King Boo, can you tell me how you control the weather? I'll take that as a no. King Boo reanimates Bowser from the dead and uses him like some kind of puppet. I hate this, this is horrifying, this is like the only thing that ever killed me in this game. Oh, he's dead. The mansion disappears because apparently it wasn't real, and Luigi gets a new one, of varying quality depending on how much money you collected. The reward for beating the game is the same, but you take more damage and suck more. Europe's was cooler. And that was Luigi's Mansion on GameCube. There was a remake on 3DS as well, but it released in 2018, after the Switch, which means nobody cared. This GameCube version, however, is great. It nails its spookiness, its characters, its exploration, and its cutting-edge graphics, for the time. I have my nitpicks, it's certainly not perfect, but it was clear Luigi's Mansion would be a success. And it was, becoming the 5th best-selling game on the GameCube. And then there was nothing for 12 years. As the law of the universe states, we can't have nice things. And if they ever want to make a sequel to Luigi's Mansion, we all have to suffer. During its original development, Nintendo wanted to add stereoscopic 3D to Luigi's Mansion, because we all know how well that's gone before. Every GameCube has the hardware to display 3D. They were serious, but it would just end up being far too costly on the consumer's end. Nintendo's stubbornness knows no bounds. Knowing that the 3DS was coming, and remembering the original 3D plans for the game, Nintendo brought in Next Level Games, Canadian developers known for Mario Strikers and Punch-Out on Wii, to develop the next game in the series. Thus, in 2013, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon was released. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon begins with Gadd being friendly with ghosts, because apparently purple moons are a ghost's best friend. That didn't last long. Now the ghosts are bad, Professor is scared, Luigi is kidnapped, Fallout Shelter. The game features much more dialogue than the original. Gadd is a very, very vocal guy, turns out, and he doesn't know that King Boo did this, despite the fact that we saw it! The game spends its entire length going, "Ooh, I wonder who did it!" Despite the fact we saw him here, and we see him multiple other times. Gadd has security cameras! Use them! This game is structured very differently from the original. Instead of one mansion, there's 5, and instead of freely exploring them, everything is heavily mission-based. This was done because, well, it's a 3DS game. It needed to be very pick up and play. This wasn't a perfect conversion, though. The game still retains many of its exploration elements, with tons of money to find by solving little environmental puzzles or just being curious, boos to find, and a new collectible, technically, being the gems. They're no longer worth money, but there's 13 per mansion. The problem with these is that when they're sorted into missions like this, the only incentive to explore are these collectibles. The game tries very hard to funnel you into a certain direction. Moving off the beaten path feels a lot like going where I'm not supposed to be. It gives weird vibes. As well, if you, let's say, miss a boo, you have to restart and replay the entire mission to get that boo. And these can be really long missions. The problem gets worse when every mission has a ranking system, and you're actively discouraged from taking a long time. I just ignored this, but it makes this level structure a major downside. Especially when the rewards for these collectibles are mediocre at best. However, these mansions are fun to explore. Each of them has a unique theme and feel, many with interesting rooms and secrets to find, unique gimmicks and mechanics. These are very interesting places to be. Sometimes the levels are pretty linear, going through a part of the mansion you don't really have to go through much again. Sometimes they're a bit more open-ended, but it's never as open-ended as LM1. This especially isn't helped when some of these levels are just straight up filler, being forced to retread ground we've already seen because this dog decides to be my worst nightmare. Even the levels unlocked for getting the booze really just feel like this filler content. It's a shame, because when these levels hit, they hit, which funnily enough oftentimes was those more linear levels. Because even if you were just going in a straight line, it was always new and interesting. I know the game had to be changed for the portable form factor, but it's not like you can just stop in the middle of these missions, and they average 30 minutes to an hour in length anyways. It might be faster to go save it a Toad in this mansion than finish a mission in this one. It makes deaths so punishing, Toad escorts so much more infuriating, it just doesn't work for this style of gameplay. But I've bickered for long enough. Let's talk about some houses. The first two, the Gloomy Manor and the Haunted Towers, are pretty generic. Gloomy Manor is what you'd expect, and Haunted Towers has a plant laboratory kind of vibe to it. Now, funny story, I have an irrational fear of plants in any kind of scary situation, which means I hate these enemies. The old Clockworks and Secret Mine are vast thematic changes, one being a desert western factory and a frozen gem mine. These are great shakeups and feature tons of memorable set pieces and rooms. When I say that the linear missions can be good, I'm definitely talking about the ones here. Gloomy Manor is very mediocre, Haunted Towers is better, but the Clockworks and Mine are both very good overall. It's fun to explore them for gems or hunt around for the booze. Speaking of that, you've probably noticed that Luigi's ghost fighting toolkit is quite different this time around. The Poltergust is upgraded to the 5000 now, featuring a new, Super Suck? After grabbing a ghost with the strobe bulb using a big charged flash, you don't have a second analog stick to aim the vacuum. So instead, you just use the left stick and the ability to jump while charging up this meter. Once it's full, you can shave off tons of extra health from the ghosts, and you get some extra cash for doing so. This is fantastic! It adapts this already fun combat system to the 3DS, keeps it distinct and fresh, and gives extra skill-based rewards. The money in this game goes towards upgrades for this meter, adding a second and third charge level, each granting more money rewards, and upgrades for the other new tool, the Dark Light. This is occasionally used in combat, but is mostly for finding invisible objects around the mansions, giving out money, gems, and this is how you find the booze in this game. You fight them by finding them with the Dark Light, then blasting them all around the room. It's satisfying. Unfortunately, these are all the upgrades we get, and I had them all by the third mansion. Maybe a strobe bulb with better range, or an upgrade to health would have been nice to keep rewarding me, considering this is the only use for money in this game. Overall, these tools are pretty fun to use, but how do the suckies feel about them? I can't tell if you're mad at me because I killed you, or because I'm calling you a sucky. The ghost selection this time around is fine. They're pretty generic guys, but really, it's either lanky green or large or orange. Take your pick. Now, I did get more bored of these designs, but that might just be because the game is like double the length. Or there's less variety. Or they just suck. What do you think? The real shame here is that there aren't any portrait ghosts. Kind of. There are some unique encounters with unique ghosts, which feel similar to the portrait ghosts of ye olde GameCube times, but they're few and far between. Instead, our bosses are all non-ghosts being possessed by the same generic guy 5 times in a row. We have such highlights as Ew, literally just a staircase, the passage of time affects us all, and hot garbage. This boss fight sucks. It's boring, slow, inconsistent, and the cutscene with the Possessor Ghost doesn't change what color he is depending on the part of the fight. At least he looks vaguely neat. I said the word look. Let's talk about that. The whole game has a very different look to it. I think they just wanted a more Mario-looking design for it all, and it works, but it's not the greatest for something that's meant to be scary. The music can get repetitive, it's a lot of tracks being reused, but it's enjoyable, it's got some nice songs. The spooky atmosphere that the original thrived in is missing at times though, and the game's scare factor often just comes from cheap jump scares. I hate jump scares, but they do add some tension, so I guess technically they do their job. You get a B this time, but don't do it again. This atmosphere is taken to a whole new level once we reach the final mansion though. The treacherous mansion begins with a sweep of a catacombs, vaguely Lost Woods-esque at times, plenty spooky at times, and the only time Polterpup isn't blatant filler. Infinitely respawning carpets. Once we reach the main floors, things get interesting. It opens up to our largest area yet, where we have to find 2 toads. Great! Except, the way we do this is by wandering around the mansion and solving puzzles by bringing items to different parts of it, assisted by teleporters we set up by visiting these areas. There's lots to explore, the rooms are throwbacks to the previous 4 mansions, it's fun, it's interesting, and it features the best spooky moment in the entire game. This mission rules! Later missions have us revisiting these areas after visiting more rooms with entirely unique themes, with unique fun gimmicks, and we get to do more puzzle solving across the entire mansion. This was the most fun I had the entire game, so many of the problems I had with the structure weren't really here. It was just plain fun. Eventually, we get a fake-out final boss with rip-off Boolossus, and this is pretty fun and clever, taking advantage of the knowledge of fighting boos in general. Then there's filler reusing the content of the very mediocre levels for getting all the boos in an area, because this game loves to rain on its own parade. And then it's final boss time through a dark, scary portal. Surely it's King Boo, it's another possessor ghost reusing the infinitely spawning carpets. Seriously? I should have known you'd never let me down. After a better King Boo fight than in 1, Don't At Me, Mario was saved. Did I ever even mention him? Who cares, it doesn't matter. The Dark Moon is saved and Luigi gets a dog. Presumably all the money he collected will now be spent on dog food, because it clearly didn't matter for anything else. This game is pretty alright, aside from how much I just dunked on it. It's just, so many of the changes that this game makes are things that were done right in the original. But that doesn't mean it didn't improve on some things. The extra dialogue is better, the varied locales keep things interesting so that it's significantly longer runtime. The regular combat is better, gems being collectibles is interesting. This game's main problem is its structure and its padding. And its boss fights. Those just suck. If you're ever too scared to catch ghosts on your own, you can steal your friends from their normal lives and play some Scare Scraper. Team up with up to 4 friends across Download Play and climb the tower 1 floor at a time, by either hunting all the ghosts, finding the exit, or finding all the Polterpups. This mode was the first time I ever played a Luigi's Mansion game, and I remember loving it. It's kinda boring. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, like the original, was a big success. The gameplay of the series is just plain fun, when they're not making me fight a staircase. With a new developer, the future looked bright. Soon after the launch of the game, Next Level announced that they would only be working with Nintendo, meaning they too saw the potential. Surely their next game would be a good one. Welp. In September 2018, we got our first look at Luigi's Mansion 3. Working title, huh? Keep telling yourself that. Luigi's Mansion 3 begins with a gorgeously animated bus journey to the last resort. How did you all fall for this? Once arrived, we meet Helen Gravely, and to be fair, I definitely fall for that one. Everyone retreats to their rooms, evil sphere is evil and also obvious, take notes 3DSE Gadd, and we begin our adventure through the hotel. Luigi's Mansion 3 is once again structured differently from the other 2 games. Can you stay consistent for 5 minutes? Instead of being one large open mansion, or a handful of smaller ones, the game is separated into 17 floors, all interconnected through elevators. While these are initially very hotel-themed, past the first third of this game, things start to become more themed like Dark Moon's later mansions. This format works excellently for the gameplay style of the series. It's constantly shaking things up aesthetically and gameplay-wise, and it retains some of the best parts of the linear mission structure, but you can explore through these areas much more, and come back whenever you want. Fine, you win. Once you finish these areas, even the largest and longest are relatively small, but while playing them, they feel much more complete. Except for the intentionally short ones. Welp. Since these floors are more freely accessible, the game's collectibles, being the boos and gems again, are much less of a pain. There's 6 gems per floor, each being a themed shape, and 1 boo per floor. The gems are really fun to find and solve the puzzles for, and the boos are way more entertaining to kill. Money is plentiful on these floors too, sometimes just being closets full of crap to suck up and earn $2,000 in the process. In fact, there's just tons of things to vacuum up and break. There's also some achievements to unlock too, some for skillful play, some for lots of exploration, and some for billiards. This exploration and variety is heavily supported by everything new to Luigi's kit. Of course we have the suction, unsuction, flashbang, and dark light from Dark Moon. Luigi gains a suction shot, useful for moving and breaking objects, knocking things over, anything where the suck isn't good enough to move it. There's also a burst hop, used to repel or dodge attacks and nearby ghosts, and anytime you need to jump to solve a puzzle. And finally, he gains... Please notice how every time Luigi summons Gooigi, he looks like his soul left his body. I hate it. This game finally nails the control scheme for Luigi's Mansion. It's convenient, fun, and satisfying, especially in combat. The power sucks are gone, instead replaced by a slam, letting you whack ghosts around into other ghosts. This is incredibly satisfying, however, it makes the combat against regular ghosts almost always trivially easy. The only slightly difficult ghosts are these big red jerks, but that's really only cause they're difficult to suck. You have to get close to ghosts' tails to get at them, so you gotta circle around these ones. Still not very hard. I mean, it may not be as hard, but murder is murder. The combat shines with the boss fights, because they remembered how to make boss fights that involve ghosts! Sometimes! These require skill, timing, knowledge of your moveset, and the ability to ask Gadd for advice when you get stuck. There are a couple I wasn't a huge fan of, but overall they were fun and memorable. These are where you get your elevator buttons, allowing you to go to other floors, and what? You really thought they could resist pointless backtracking involving a domesticated house pet? This game truly steps it up a notch in the graphics department, taking after the GameCube original and being a graphical showcase for the system. The sheer detail in every inch of this game is staggering. Where Luigi's Mansion was an innovator in dust physics and the 3DS did its best, Luigi's Mansion 3 shows that making Luigi's overalls a far more detail than required really does add to the experience. The animation quality here is on another level too. Everything that moves feels so alive, including the dead. Is this what they mean by reanimating the dead? But, of course, if the spooky isn't spooky, you won't be spooked. And that's spooky. So hopefully they made sure to spook. Entering a new floor always has an intimidating, foreboding feel. Opening a door into a dark room evokes both worry and curiosity. And they brought back the damn plants again! Despite once again being full of cheap jump scares, including one that caught me so off guard it haunts me to this day, it features some genuinely incredible, suspenseful, haunting moments. Though, nothing quite tops the best from Dark Moon. You know what? I'm sick and tired of being in danger alone. Does your health insurance cover possession? Scarescraper returns, however, only 2 people can play per system. The other person is forced to become Gooigi. This is how the co-op in the main story mode works too, actually. Floors are much longer and larger now, and the objective for each varies randomly. It's still kind of boring. And then there's the Scream Park. 3 minigames, 6 more if you buy the DLC. I mean, if they got DLC, they must be good, right? Since there's 3 of us, one person was always alone on a team. These suck, and not in a ghost capturing way. Upon reaching floor 12, we encounter a strange roadblock of a giant boat in the way of the door. Welp. Turns out Gadd has the upgrade for us, we just have to backtrack through the boiler works to get it back from some ghosts. I refuse to hit this table again. To be fair, there is a decent chunk of new content down here. Once we do so, along with saving the Toad, which is much more bearable than the headache it was before, we unlock a new ability for the Poltergust, a form of super ultra suction, but only when we attach to a specific outlet. This is only used one more time after this, and it's just for a gem. I love it when arbitrary keys are disguised as new abilities. We then get to fight one of the most memorable and best bosses in the game, let Toad play among the stars, and Helen Gravely is mad.
Ugh, this is the last time I find evil henchmen on Fiverr. I'm swapping to Indeed.
Luigi then goes to the gym, and unfortunately one of the most confusing floors and bosses yet. I wasn't a huge fan of this one. At least we get to move on to another floor now, son of a bitch! Then we get to Disco Fever with an incredibly clever set of puzzles. This boss fight is gonna be awesome! I take back everything I said about your animation quality. Finally, we get to confront Helen Gravely ourselves, holding Mario captive. We find the 4 keys to shove inside of King Boo. A fairly regular Wednesday considering Luigi's resume. One last boss fight with Helen, and we get to free Mario, who promptly becomes the scariest thing in this game. Well, that was rude. King Boo displays basic math skills, attempts to kill Luigi, duplicates himself twice, tries to swallow the entire hotel with a giant painting, and is finally captured until the next time he gets sold at a garage sale. Since when can my dog fly? The ghosts become good, the hotel is rebuilt, and hey look, I got the highest possible rank. Now the next time King Boo is freed, the basic ghosts will be purple. And thus ends the story of the Luigi's Mansion Trilogy, a collection of fantastic games that all hold up in their own ways, pushing the limits of their systems and their controllers without slacking on the gameplay and exploration. Haunting experiences that everyone can enjoy. Like, really, everyone! I got to the end of them all without being totally horrified! This is great! Oh hey, the lights went out again and I just so happened to be holding a Leafy on. Oh no, 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 no!